Hi, how are you doing? This is the Gamertron and welcome back to the Gamertron Show. So, Dark Souls Free, one of my most anticipated games of 2016, has been out for a while now, and I've been playing, enjoying, and embracing it. I love me some Dark Souls. Granted, I don't play and experience Dark Souls the same way as others. I do play Dark Souls offline, single player, modded, with infinite souls and infinite healing items. I hate that I have to keep bringing this up, but them's the works. Now, quite frankly, the sole purpose of this video is just to tell you guys how much I love Dark Souls Free. This is a great game, another great entry into this great series. And seeing how this is my channel and I can make whatever videos I want to make a video praising this game. So let's get started on that, and let's get started with something controversial. Dark Souls Free may be my new favorite Dark Souls game. Yep. I know that's a pretty big statement to make. Now, Dark Souls is one of my favorite games of all time, and I love Dark Souls 2. If you check out my top 10 games of 2014, Dark Souls 2 is on that list. I love the Dark Souls games. I love the Dark Souls games for the world, for the enemies, for the boss battles. Oh, the boss battles. For the cool armor, for the awesome weapons, for the wonderful, simplistic, and yet versatile combat. Especially when it comes to this game, but we'll get into that in just a second. I love the Souls games, and Dark Souls Free, I think, finally meshes together a bunch of elements that I already loved from the previous games and added just a couple new features and changes and innovations here and there, especially to the gameplay, that make this, quite frankly, possibly my new favorite game in the Dark Souls series. Before, I liked Dark Souls 1 more than Dark Souls 2. Now I like Dark Souls 2, but Dark Souls will always be something special. But Dark Souls Free, guys, Now, while this game isn't flawless, and I will explain why, just give me a moment to gush over this game. First off, the visuals. Dark Souls Free looks gorgeous, with definitely an improvement on textures and animation from the previous games. Oh god, the animations. Oh, with gorgeous lighting, special effects. Oh, and the armor. Oh my goodness, the armors. The armor sets in Dark Souls Free are spectacular. So well detailed, and they have reflections. The armors are actually reflective. They're shiny like actual armor. Light actually bounces off the metal. Oh, it looks so good. The characters, creatures, monsters, enemies, NPCs in general are spectacularly designed and animated. The animations on your enemies, especially the enemies, the bosses, the creatures, the animation on these things, on these characters, they're so well animated, they're so smooth and dynamic. It's really quite impressive. Then there are the boss battles, and these are some of the best bosses I have ever fought in a Dark Souls game. Granted, I do like some of the bosses from Dark Souls 2 and of course the original Dark Souls a bit more, because it's really hard to top Knight Artorias and Kalameet the Black Dragon, two of the best bosses in video game history in my opinion. But the bosses still are amazing. They're creative, they're fun, they're incredibly challenging. They keep to the Dark Souls standard. But next to all of that, on top of all of that, the thing that quite frankly sells Dark Souls Free for me, the thing that may put it above the other Dark Souls games, for me at least, is the gameplay, is the combat. The combat has been tweaked and reworked in certain ways and aspects, including speed, damage dealt, special attacks, and a new emphasis on dual wielding and combos. That the combat in Dark Souls Free, to me at least, is just more satisfying than the combat in Dark Souls 1 and 2. And I really like the combat in Dark Souls 1 and 2 for its simplicity, yet its dynamic versatility in that simplicity. But now Dark Souls Free actually has dynamic versatility through just dynamic versatility. The combat is no longer your simple block, dodge, slash, cast a spell, maybe throw a bomb. All melee weapons now have special attacks, and comboing, dual-wielding different weapon types creates new special attacks and combos. Dark Souls Free borrows a lot of elements from Bloodborne, where the combat is a lot more offensive, a lot faster, and while providing you a challenge makes you feel like a badass. In Dark Souls Free, you fight way more enemies than you usually would in Dark Souls 1 and 2. You get overwhelmed and surrounded by enemies quite often in Dark Souls Free, but you are given just enough power power, and just enough options in combat that instead of being forced to just dodge your way out of everything or run away, you can actually go toe-to-toe with these mobs of enemies. Dodging and blocking will still be required, but now those are no longer just your primary options. You can actually take the fight to these overwhelming warriors and beasties. It's just very satisfying. There's no other way to put it. It's very satisfying. There's just so much good about Dark Souls 3, so much good. Such a great game. An incredibly loyal and upstanding addition to the Souls series. However, the game is not perfect, as no game is perfect. I don't know if you guys have noticed throughout the gameplay of this video and the gameplay of any and all other Dark Souls 3 videos. Have you noticed something about Dark Souls 3 overall? There's a lot of gray. A bit too much gray. I'm not a fan of the color scheme of Dark Souls 3. Literally, that is one of my very few and biggest flaws with the game. It's just the overabundance of gray. With Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, there was a variety of color. Greens, yellows, blues, reds, browns, but with Dark Souls 3, it's a lot of gray. Like, no matter what new location you go to, there's that constant gray saturation and color scheme. Now, the Dark Souls have always been oppressive and at times kind of depressing games, and that was definitely implied in its atmosphere. But I'll be damned, I'd like just a bit more color and a little less gray. But that's just me personally. Now, I've made a video in the past talking about the color scheme of brown and gray and why gamers don't like these color schemes. Now, while I, for the most part, are fine with these color schemes, having played the previous Dark Souls games that were bursting with color and then coming to Dark Souls 3, I know the potential for color. I know the potential for bright, beautiful colors. You can still have a bright and colorful environment and still have your game have a dark, depressing atmosphere. But again, this is more of a subjective complaint. Having the color scheme be gray doesn't really negatively affect the objective quality of the game. I'm speaking from a subjective standpoint, as I do for almost all my videos. And while there's nothing wrong with the gray color scheme, I don't know, me personally, I like bright, illuminating colors. And the last two Dark Souls games had that, so. But really, if that's my only complaint, if that's my only gripe, if that's my only negative with this game, is the color gray, then well, it's doing something damn right if I have nothing else to complain about. It's got all the elements that make Dark Souls great. It's got the challenge, it's got the creativity, it's got the deep lore and story and characters. It's all there if you look for it. I think I'm going to need to replay all 3 games in the Dark Souls trilogy back to back to really determine and examine which of the games is my favorite from the series, but I would be lying if I didn't tell you that I had a ton of fun playing Dark Souls 3. I can guarantee you it's going to be in my top 10 games of the year. But that's a video for another time, and this video has come to a close. What'd you think of the video? Let me know your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on Dark Souls 3 and this video in the comment section below. I love reading comments. I get nearly enough comments. Please leave a comment. If you like the video in any way, shape, or form, please hit the like button. Hitting the like button helps you, helps me, helps everybody involved with the video if you hit the like button. If you want to help out and support the video, then please share the video on social media, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to help out and support me directly, then please consider pledging and becoming a patron on my Patreon. Anyways, guys, that's been a video, and I will see you all later.